um, falls and rises in tide on the planet. If you go to the Mediterranean, the tide hardly goes up and down at all, but here we have these huge tides, and we have sufficient energy and tidal power to completely power our country forever if we had proper tidal generators around the coast, which are not
Could we leave it at that, David? Can I just do one offer to anyone else in the panel who wants to comment about this? Alfie?
In direct answer to your question, I think I'm totally in favour of a referendum. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But I think actually the crucial point right now is to make the case against nuclear power, because I think if we had a referendum today, we would probably increase our nuclear dependence. I think that at the moment people are not aware of the facts about it. There is a political consensus which is pro-nuclear for industrial reasons. And so I think actually the most important thing now, whilst I'd be totally in favour of a referendum, is actually to concentrate on making the substantiated arguments against nuclear power.
Okay. Miriam, since I was looking that way.
Okay.
We'll go down the line.
Well, I began my political career in the CND Street Theatre, looking at nuclear power, and I quickly realised that really a lot of it's to do with the economy, and actually we won't fight nuclear unless we show that it's not actually value for money. And nowhere is it better illustrated than what's happened to Japan. As you may know, Japan was a very thriving economy, number 2 in the world, and it's actually slipped now. And so that happened last year, and it's struggling to get over the terrible things that happen and the awful loss of life. No way can it be said that Japan got value for money from its nuclear industry. And also, in our region, it's very difficult very often to campaign locally. I was a parish councillor, because where I live, I drove past Aldermaston, and when you go past the huge Aldermaston, you find that they influence the parish councils. They've bought many of the parish councils, if you like, and they give money to some of the local councils, what one say is a right to exist for them, because actually they don't make sense on their own. So there's a whole cost to the local community of these nuclear power stations, and the nuclear waste, as has been said. So I think it's very important that we look at the costs of nuclear power, and we see that it's actually been the detriment of the community and the detriment of the economy to have nuclear power, and it's high time that we actually stopped hurting our economy like that and switched to renewables, which in the longer term will make a lot more sense.
Any other people want to make a comment?
I don't know if I might just break your question up into two. Firstly, referendums, are they a good idea? Well, my wife is Swiss, and they have referendums all the time, and they have a lot more true localism rather than this pretend localism which is being portrayed here. And people really do have a say on lots of different issues on a regular basis. And if we had that here, then I think it would be good to have nuclear power as a referendum issue, because we have a culture of having a say. I think first of all we need to have that culture first, and it applying to many more issues rather than just nuclear. In terms of nuclear, I feel that we've moved from debating whether climate change is happening or not to debating what technology we want to rely on to solve it. And I don't think we're going to solve the problem of climate change with technology. We need to look at culture, we need to look at issues of corruption, look at issues of economics. And in that case, the nuclear power leaves us with a centralised means of generating electricity. What we need, I think, is to do is decentralise that, have a massive alternatives provided both locally and at different scales, and focus on demand reduction, because planning to do research or building stuff that takes 5 or 10 years to come about is not going to cut our demand of electricity, let alone the wider energy demand in the near future. I work for Bioregional. We have the phrase one planet living. We currently live as if we have 3 planets in the UK. We need to bring that back down to 1. And that's about demand reduction, and that's about all things working together. And I think a focus on one thing on its own, be it dirty, dangerous and costly, is probably a mistake.
Okay. Bea, well, I think Bea was...
I like very much what Jonathan has said, so I'm not going to add to that bit of the conversation. I think you're absolutely right. I just want to say this. I come from Cumberland, and our life in Cumberland was always lived in the shadow of Sellafield. And the reason that it was such a toxic thing for us was there in one of the most beautiful parts of this island, smack in the middle of it, was this bunker, which became Sellafield, which has bled toxic waste into that land for almost as long, indeed absolutely as long as it's existed. lies have been told about it. There's a long, long history of Cumbrian activism that's been about why this thing in the middle of our countryside, how it was as dangerous as it was, and how to get at the truth. I suppose, just finally add, my mother, who is now is dead, but once she retired, became quite naughty. And she spent 2 or 3 years doing things at Sellafield, invading, snipping away at the fences, burrowing underneath the fences. I think she got arrested about 30 times. She was desperate to be sent to prison for raiding Sellafield. And she did it for 2 reasons. One, because it was dangerous, because there was something absolutely, palpably unsustainable about that industry. But also because it was an industry that was showered with secrecy. It was endlessly an industry that was beyond the reach of democratic accountability. She did, I have to tell you, get her week in the nick. She got sent to Durham for serial non-payment of fines. And I think then never ever wanted to go to prison ever again. And my dad was very relieved by that. But it was a very important issue for those of us who lived in Cumberland, because we lived with the grotesque truth of that industry in a place that of course, for thousands of people, absolutely depended on it. It was sold to people as, you will get a job. And of course, people compromised what they knew and what they thought in order to just get a job.
Okay, Beverly, just finish us off.
On the issue of a referendum, I am in favour of referendums on some subjects, like, for example, Europe. I think there should be, the British people should have a referendum on that, because I think, although I'm in favour of that, us having some sort of political union, I do think we need to renew the contract with the British people, because at the moment there is so much concern about Europe that we need to decide whether we're in or out. On having a referendum about nuclear power, I'm not so sure, because I think it's really quite a complex subject. Nuclear power stations seem like a magic bullet in these days where we have such concern about climate change. But I don't believe that nuclear power is that magic bullet. As has already been said, we're told a lot of lies about nuclear power, and of course anyone who watches The Simpsons will know that the problem with nuclear power stations, leaving aside everything else, is human error. What I most have against nuclear power, apart from the dangers of it, is that it's a free market solution. It's for huge companies to build huge reactors with huge amounts of capital. Local communities are not involved in that, they just have something placed beside them, and a handful of them might be lucky to get a job there. It takes the resilience out of local communities providing their energy for their own needs. What we need is a diverse mix of renewable energy in this country, and if we go down the path of having nuclear power, it's going to be just a huge amount of money and faith put in nuclear power, and there won't be that sort of investment that we need in renewable energy.
Yeah, yeah.
Excellent.
Can I make one further point?
More briefly, if you could.
I think that the economic side of it is really important. You know, that, nuclear power is uneconomical. One of the reasons we've got it is actually because of the relationship it has with the military, and it's been subsidised because there have been military interests in nuclear power. But this actually brings me to a further point, which is that we haven't just got the economic dangers of nuclear power, and we've also got the fact that it has vast potential to produce a weapon of mass destruction, whichever country uses it. And actually, I think one of the problems with people talk about the Iran crisis, actually this is a nuclear crisis. This is the fact that if you are enriching uranium in a light water reactor up to 20% for safe means of nuclear power, you can make a nuclear weapon. You have to enrich it a bit further to up to 80%. It's the same facilities that are used, and you can make a dirty bomb with 20%. So the point is that nuclear power actually comes with the means to create a weapon of mass destruction, and I think that is politically unacceptable.
Chairman, coming back to just the subject of referenda. We saw in the
David,
saw in the-
you're having a bite of the cherry. We do need to move on because time is moving on.
just a very quick point.
No, I think we need to, please, if we can, move on because I'm aware
I'll
of
speak to you later.
the time. Yes, Keith Taylor has joined us at the back of the room, but what we're going to do now, we will take questions later, but we do need to move on. The structure of this meeting, the idea is that there are 5-minute opportunities for each of the candidates along the stage, and time is pressing. So might I perhaps ask if she wants to talk for 5 minutes, you don't have to be, you don't have to talk at all, but would you like to?
Well, I'd love to talk to you. I think one of the things that's important about this panel and some of the conversations that we're having at meetings like this is that all of these people have a passionate commitment to the ethics, the values and the priorities that the Green Party promotes. The wonderful thing about the Green Party is that it's about the radical and the doable. It's at the moment, I think, the most radical and the most reasonable political party that any of us are going to have the opportunity to vote for. Now that said, I want to just throw throw the window open to one particular dimension of this conversation that I'd like to share some thoughts with you about. For all of my political life, I've felt that if you have at the centre of what you're trying to sort out, what you're trying to address, the image of a single mother with a couple of kids and an aged parent, and you work out what it is that she needs, then you've got closer to sorting stuff out, it seems to me, than in any other way. And the reason I think that I want to suggest this subject, if you like, at the moment is because she is precisely the person who the Industrial Revolution and the 200 years worth of this way of running industrial economies has been run at the expense of. Which is a slightly awkward back to front sentence construction. The assumption has been that, first of all, she will be sustained by a man, that the kind of values that she brings to everyday life, to what's important about everyday life, a toddler, wiping bottoms, wiping tears, taking care. She will have all sorts of crafts and skills and intelligences that any bloke in her family is likely to have. But she'll be certainly doing things and will have responsibilities that he won't have, because we've constructed modernity in the image of a kind of conquistadorial masculinity. I don't mean any of you men in here are nice. I mean an approach to an economy which is about a kind of Faustian production that is recklessly careless of the means by which you make a sustainable, renewable, everyday life that takes responsibility for the reproduction of society and the reproduction of the earth. Now, of course, she, in a sense, embodies what you need to do to make a world that is both equitable and environmentally renewable, sustainable. Now, what she needs us. She, more than anybody else, needs a green solution, a green way of thinking about politics. She needs social justice. She needs a form of state that is based on solidarity, that values the work of care that she personally extends to her nearest and dearest and to her community, and that for us, society needs to extend to all of us. And the Greens have inscribed that approach in our whole approach to the economy and to the way in which society is organised.
There's one minute to go.
1 minute to go. Right. We've reached a point where there's a sense in which, this woman who, for me as a feminist, would be at the centre of my political agenda, her importance has been around for most of my adult life. Environmentalism has been there for most of my adult life. It's kind of there in our collective common sense. And yet, the irony is that the conditions for realising the social justice agenda that she needs and the environmental agenda that she needs have been progressively withdrawn over the last 3 decades.
30 seconds.
And we are now faced with the consequences of that withdrawal. The neoliberal sway of politics all across the earth now is inimical to the realisation of the kind of solutions that she needs and she, as a proxy for the earth, needs.
Thank you.
I think I've just about got there.
What we're going to do now is we've been joined by Keith Taylor. Keith, what we'll be doing is, as well as the 5-minute slots, I was going to suggest not the 5-minute slot, but we've been doing a 1-minute slot right at the beginning, where just for you to say your name, who you are.
You've given the game away.
If you would like the opportunity to do that, so if you could keep it to a minute, just to describe who you are.
Of course. Hello, I'm Keith Taylor, I'm a member of the Green Party. I used to be a city councillor in Brighton and Hove for 11 years. And then when Caroline Lucas was elected to Westminster, I took her place in the European Parliament in June 2010. Throughout my political life, it's 11 years as a councillor and as the principal speaker of the Green Party, and I worked for Caroline. Throughout my political life, I wanted to make every attempt I could, to explain the way that government works and to make life better and fairer for the people in the region. So when I was a councillor, I'd be actually helping, for example, the families of autistic children when the council was threatening to close their home. And now when I'm an MEP, it's just a bit different. You had 8,000 people in my constituency.
10 seconds if you could.
10 seconds. I had 8,000 in my constituency, and now I've got 8 million. But the principles are the same. I'm trying to make life better, identifying the green vision that I'm sure you're hearing all about. I'm sorry I was late. I was trying to make life better for the users of Ocean Ward Southampton General Hospital, but as you know, is under threat of closure. It's a children's, a paediatric cardiac care unit, and that's why I'm late. I'm sorry.
But there will be a chance to speak.
Yeah.
Well, what we can do now is take a further question. I think we'll probably need to limit ourselves to one question, given the time it's taken. I think it's right and appropriate that the panel each get a chance to answer the question. But we probably need to take one more question, and then let the third person give their 5-minute talk about themselves. So could I have one more question? Oh gosh. The back there first.
I know some of you are passionate about animal welfare, and that's my passion as well. I've spent most of my life fundraising for various animal organisations, particularly Compassion in World Farming. I ran a group for 5 years for them specifically. My question is, what do you think the way forward is in stopping the live export trade and factory farming, which are both absolutely vile industries?
Okay, who would like to take that first? Miriam is going to.
Just very quickly, you may be aware that this week the World Health Organization said that the end of modern healthcare as we know it may be upon us. Did any of you see that? It's really serious. And what they said is that we have done such dreadful things to the factory farmed animals that people are eating and shoved them full of antibiotics to such an extent that we will, it's really terrifying and it's also immoral, that we will no longer be able to cure the most common infections because we've actually got completely resistant to antibiotics through the stuff that they put in the animals. So I would argue that what goes around comes around. If we're cruel to animals, if we rip the planet off and just use other species in such a terrible way, we will end up hurting ourselves or even making ourselves go extinct. It's a very serious issue. It's in the papers this week. If you go ahead and have a look at that, you'll see. So for me, the issue of factory farming is personal, it's outrageous, and it's cruel. And what does it say about us if we have to do that kind of thing? I don't know if any of you have seen what they do in a chicken farm or in a turkey farm. It's really awful. And surely we think more of ourselves than that we should treat other species like that. It seems to me it says something very bad about us. what I would say that I've done about that is that I've created this thing called the green economy, and my argument is that economics is not about profit and greed and those kind of things. I think it's about reclaiming economics, and I always say wherever I go, it's about all of us together, all people everywhere, and it's about nature, other species, the planet and its systems. And if economics becomes like that, and them as beneficiaries, so that they're better off after a transaction with us, an economics transaction, then we've got a far better, safer, kinder economy, and much more productive economy, and much more beneficial for all of us than the kind of disgusting thing that's going on at the moment, which will only serve to hurt us.
Okay, who else would like to pick up the subject? Jane. If you could limit yourself to a minute, I'd appreciate it.
I don't know about that. I was one of the regular protesters at Shoreham against the live exports. I was down there probably 3 or 4 nights a week protesting with every